Welcome everyone to episode 59 in our Space Shooter DevVenture. Now, this live stream is continuing from the last one, according to me, in live time, exactly straight after the last one, okay? So, it's the same day, literally the very next hour. And so I'm just checking why it says I'm offline. Why does it say I'm offline? Anyway, so in our last session, we were checking how the collision avoidance was working, and we had we found out that mining object was actually being written as mining target, which is wrong. So I changed that to be mining object to match the group over here, right? And so now if we go to testing seek behavior, it should find this and immediately try and avoid it. So let's go ahead and test that. If I say go to waypoint 2, it should go to waypoint 2 and avoid this asteroid. So go to waypoint 2, watch it collide, do the avoidance, and then immediately carry on going for waypoint 2. Amazing. Amazing. It worked, right? Did you see how it worked? That's so cool. So now I'm going to copy this and I'm going to send that over to Perplexity and tell it, hey, by the way, it worked. So here is the output from the last run. You had incorrectly named the one group mining target when it is actually called mining object. I fixed this in the code and now it seems to work as expected. Does it look like the output is showing the correct is showing correctly? Yeah, that's better. Skip this. Okay, so yes, that output shows the override lane and resume behavior working correctly as intended. Amazing. So what the log confirms, the ship starts a normal find waypoint seek pattern. You know, find the waypoint, starting behavior seek, index 0 for pattern find waypoint, seek behavior activated for ship 0 targeting this waypoint. The danger sensor hits a mining object and triggers flee as an override, triggering flee override from danger at the location. Start override behavior called with flee in override false, starting override behavior flee for ship 0, flee behavior activated for ship 0 from danger at location with flee direction this, and then flee runs until it reaches safety, then completes, right? And then the manager restores and resumes the original pattern that matches the design pattern used, or rather the design pattern paused on obstacle proximity, and flee executed as a temporary override. Then the original seek resumes and completes once space is clear. Okay, so that's amazing. So that's the end of phase, hopefully. So now I can ask it, is this the end of phase 2 then? Shall we investigate what else can be done? Or rather, what can be done next? Yes, that clean seek flee override resume seek complete pattern, that run is exactly what phase 2 was aiming for, right? So that phase is effectively done. Where things stand now, right? Patterns run as linear sequences. So arrival, shoot, flee, find waypoint or seek, and then NPC behavior manager can save the pattern state, run flee as a temporary override when requested, ignore pattern completions while in override, and resume the saved pattern when flee completes. Right? And then danger sensor now triggers flee overrides automatically when the ship approaches tagged obstacles or mining objects. Natural next directions. All of these can be taken in small testable iterations. Improve flee robustness, threat awareness for the shooting mode, multiple danger types and priorities. If you want to keep momentum on the current feature, a good next micro phase would be adding a flee failsafe and a clear failure reason, and then print that path once to see it in action. Okay, so before we go on with this part, let's look at these in more detail, because we covered the points, we didn't cover the subpoints, right? So improving flee robustness. We could add a simple maximum duration or maximum distance for the flee with a flee timeout status. Optionally, we could add a couple of raycasts in flee to bias the deflection towards open space in cluttered areas, right? And then have threat awareness for shooting modes, right? So not urgent but important in later cases, introducing a threat level parameter to behavior shoot, so that in safe and static contexts it requires tight alignment as it does now, and in under attack contexts relax alignment and keep moving while firing. And then multiple danger types or priorities. So letting the danger sensor distinguish between a soft versus a hard obstacle. Example, decoration versus lethal objects. And pass a danger type to flee so you can tune radii or behavior per type. And if you want to keep minimum, or rather minimum, you want to keep momentum on the current feature, a good next micro phase would be adding a flee failsafe, a maximum duration or distance, and a clear failure reason, and then print that once to see it in action. That would be this one, the flee robustness. Shall we do it? I think we should do it. Let's go ahead and do it. Why not? Right? Again, I appreciate that this isn't the most exciting part of game development, and a lot of you are more interested in seeing the so-called eye candy, or the ear candy, like sound effects and special effects and 3D models and textures and materials and explosions and actual gameplay footage that resembles what the final game would look like. But you have to remember that most of game development is not that, because many of you are trained or used to seeing game trailers, right? Most likely. And a game trailer is designed at the end or close to the end as a marketing feature, right? To showcase to a potential buyer of the game what the game will be like. And you are used to seeing the final game, you are used to seeing demos, and you're used to seeing um, gameplay footage and those kinds of like trailers and those kind of things, right? Now that's at the end of development. What happens at the beginning of development? Do you know? Do you care? If you're watching this, you probably do care, right? Because you're DevVenturing with MTK. And the whole point of DevVenture with MTK, especially on game development, is not to hold back any of the more boring aspects of things, right? So if we're talking about DIY and electronics, that would be the schematics and the drawings and the measurements and the CAD, away from the actual 3D printing, away from the actual building the component or the building the circuit and testing it. It's the entire process. And my offering is that you experience this with me vicariously. You don't have to find out the hard way. You can watch me suffer through this and try and feel my pain, but without actually feeling it, and then see for yourself, like, oh, that's the kind of thing that goes into making a game. Nowadays, we have things like Perplexity to help with the coding, which is amazing for me. But back in the day, when I was doing my undergrad or like learning about game development and stuff, we didn't. And I had to think it all through myself. I had to plan it all on paper or on the whiteboard or whatever, and actually think it through and work it out. And, I learned a lot by doing that. And so what you're seeing me do now, coming up with all these design patterns and ideas and stuff on the fly, it's from experience, right? I've worked through this kind of stuff before. I know roughly when to use a specific design pattern and when something needs to be optimized and when it doesn't need to be optimized, or when some kind of optimization can be deferred and when it can't be deferred. And that's also crucial. We need to keep that in mind, right? Not everything needs to be optimized right away. And then there are some things that do need to be optimized from the start. But all of this is just by the way, it was just the point I'm trying to make, is that I'm doing all of the systems and the subsystems and the architectural foundations now, so that later we can do the more exciting things and have an actual game running underneath to experience those beautiful things once we add them, right? So I get that I could do a video about how to do particle effects and explosions and make the plasma bolt explode after it times out, or once it hits something, it does a little bit of an explosion. I get I can do that, but does it add to the demo yet? Or, I mean, it adds to the demo, of course it does. My actual question is, does it add to the prototype? No, it doesn't, right? Does having a plasma bolt that explodes on impact make testing the game's functionality as a game idea? Does it help, or does it just take away resources and time and all of those things? And it's the latter, unfortunately, right? It takes people away from development of crucial features. It takes people away and time away from working on those features and adds nothing to the prototype except visual effects. And the objective of a prototype is not visual fidelity, unfortunately, unless that visual fidelity is part of the gameplay, right? So if you're doing some kind of like object finding or whatever, then it's important to have that. But okay, I get it. I am talking about this and we're not doing the work. And so let's get back to it, okay? Now, I'm gonna tell Perplexity we're gonna do the first one. Okay, so let's go ahead and work on the flee robustness. Let's go ahead and work on the flee robustness idea you suggested. I think that's enough. Do you think I need to add more information? Probably not. It knows how I work. It knows how the workflow goes, so it should be able to just deal with that. Yes, this is a good time to harden flee, so it cannot get stuck fleeing forever, or behave oddly in clutter, even if the override lane is solid, right? So what to add to flee behavior, or to behavior flee, right? What to add to behavior flee? Phase 2 robustness can stay simple and deterministic, right? Adding a max duration for any single flee run, optionally a max distance traveled while fleeing, a clear failure status so that the manager logs tell you why flee ended. And step 1 is that you have a new export and a state. So in behavior flee.gd, near the other exports, again grouping exports, even Perplexity is suggesting that we group our exported variables, right? So adding these two new export variables in, or rather near these ones, we can add these as well. No, we have to add these in and these in. So we add both groups, so all 4 variables. Then step 2, initialize tracking in activate with this code. So each flee run has its own clock and starting point, and then enforce a time limit in the process, right? Or rather limits, not necessarily just time limits, time and distance limits, right? So in process delta, after you compute the ship position, to danger and distance, and after the safe distance check, then add the robustness checks as well, right? So your current structure simplified is this, and then you update it to that, which is a lot bigger, and then how does this behave in the normal case, in the edge case, and you can start with relatively generous defaults and tune them per ship in the inspector. But the important part is that each flee run is now bounded with clear telemetry about how and or rather about why it ended, and that makes debugging and future multiple obstacle or multi-obstacle work much safer. Okay, now we currently don't have multi-obstacle dodging, right? So dodging one obstacle cannot be interrupted by dodging a second one or a third one or an nth one yet. So it doesn't have continuous interruption, you know, in the sense of like interrupt and then interrupt and then interrupt and then interrupt and continue to be interrupted ad infinitum, right? And it also, well, it's more important before we do that to have this timeout in place. I see what it's doing, and I hope that you can see that too, right? I hope you can see that that's why this is important. If we have a system in place where the AI actor can continuously dodge, repeatedly be interrupted every flee, right? So it does a flee, it finds an obstacle, and it flees from that one and interrupts its current flee. And while it's fleeing the second one, it hits a third obstacle, interrupts the second flee, and does a third flee. And then it does a fourth flee, and a fifth, and a sixth, and the seventh, and it carries on and on and on and on and on and on, right? We wanted to be able to say, you know what, I'm just continuously fleeing. It's been like 30 seconds now. Let's just stop fleeing. We'll just call this a failure. Right? We'll just call it a failure and ask the strategic and tactical layers to advise us. You know, guys, I'm not getting this right. Can you please help? And then the enemy ship controller will go, okay, fine, do this this pattern instead. Or maybe the tactical layer will go, okay, perhaps try going to the last safe point, safe location, or come back towards the capital ship. And then repeat your last pattern, you know, whatever, you know, what they call homing. You come back towards home, you know, and once you get home, then you can set off on your previous behavior pattern as you were doing. But hopefully you are far away enough from all of these danger objects that repeating your pattern won't result in a failure or a similar failure case. You get what I'm doing, right? I'm kind of trying to anticipate the best way to manage an enemy AI actor and hopefully extend that to many AI actors, because this is currently just one, you know? And so once we've got behavior set up and robust to one AI actor, we can extend it to 2, then 3, then 4, then N AI actors, right? And having that in place, we can then move on to various ship types, you know? So we've got the pirate, we've got the miner, we've got the defender, and after that's done, we can start working on all the different kinds of patterns per type. Right? And I think that would work according to resources. We'd make resources that contain all the patterns, and then have in the ready function, we have it pull in all those patterns on startup per type. And the enemy ship controller is the strategic pattern strategic layer, and so it will then use, excuse me for yawning there, 2 live streams back to back is a little bit taxing, so you'll just have to bear with me, okay? But yeah, okay, I think that's enough of a look ahead, you know? We've got our steps to go for, you know, the higher level steps. We want to do expanding on a single ship, and then expand to multiple ships, and then expand to multiple ship types, and then expand and expand and expand, right? Until we have a game, right? Then we've got all of those things in place. We can start focusing on things like score systems. We can start focusing on things like win and lose conditions. We can start focusing on things like actually mining from an asteroid, gathering the resources, and using that to purchase upgrades, like an upgrade system, and then have the functionality in place for the upgrade system, and so on and so forth. Then once all of that's done, we can start working on the visuals, right? But the primary objective right now is to have a game that can actually be tested. I can actually ask you as my audience to play this prototype, test it out, and see, oh, okay, is that how it plays? And then let me know and say, hey, by the way, MTK, your ships are a bit slow, or maybe they're too fast, or maybe they don't turn fast enough, or maybe the fire rate is too fast, maybe the damage is too slow, or you know, the amount of damage a projectile does is not enough, or you know, these kinds of things. And you don't need high fidelity assets and visual effects and sound effects and all of those things in place to know those things. You don't need all of those things in place to be able to communicate those problems to me. Right? Qualitative analysis. The player doesn't move fast enough. Okay, we can adjust that. The ship fire rate is not good enough. You know, it doesn't shoot fast enough. You need to fire more projectiles per second. Okay, what did you have in mind? You know, how much faster? And we can iterate on that, you know, and on and on. until we have all the information we need, right? And then what happens if we find out, oh, by the way, MTK, do we really need a mining vessel? What if the defender could do the mining as well as the fighting? You know? And then I go, oh, you know what? Maybe that's a good idea. And then I end up scrapping the mining ship. As a hypothetical, I don't think that will happen. I could be wrong, but I doubt that we'll come to something that drastic. But my point is, if there's a feature that isn't working and it needs to be scrapped, doesn't it make sense that that feature needs to be with as little input from time and energy and resources and money and people and everything as possible, right? Yeah, probably. And so adding on top features like animations and sound effects and particle effects and all of those things, adding it on top is a bit of a waste, especially when it gets scrapped. Now, for me, I hardly end up actually scrapping something in totality. I will probably recycle its components in other projects, or maybe the whole thing as an entire thing. Maybe it just doesn't fit in this game, but it will fit perfectly in another game. And so I don't delete and throw in the recycle bin and empty the trash or whatever. I don't throw things away completely. Excuse me, that was an insect crawling on my arm. And I freaked out for a second. But yeah, so I don't freak out. Yeah, well, clearly I do freak out. I don't waste my efforts. If I can find a way to use it in another project, I will. Okay, now let's get to work. I'm talking a lot today, as you can tell, but that's because I'm excited. If you can think about it for a second, right? It's because I'm excited because we've got so much of the work we've been doing recently. It's working. It's not like hitting a brick wall or getting repeated errors and so on, right? We're not hitting these like obstacles where we're constantly being faced with like error message after error message after error message. We're not solving this problem, and we're actually moving forward. And so I'm excited, right? I'm not used to this. Usually, without AI or without using AI correctly, we would hit these so-called brick walls, and it would take a while to break through. But now it's just we're moving, and I'm just happy about that. So, you know, if you can't be happy with me, then at least bear with me until more work gets done. If you're that kind of person. Anyway, behavior flee. Coming back to behavior flee. So I'll move this off to the side and go into the script editor and find behavior flee, which is this. Move to the very top, on top here. And so over here, you can see I'm not taking my own advice. So I'm just going to take my own advice and group all the normal variables together. And group all the exported variables together, right? And then we have 3 lines of separation between functions. Okay, so here we go. This is our 2 next export variables. So we add those 2 here. Maximum flee direction, duration, and distance. Just like that. And there you have it. Okay, so we can save that, go to the next here we can add in 2 more variables. Call this flee time elapsed, and that would be a boolean. No, it would be a float. We'll set this up as 0.0. Okay, and flee start position vector 3 is vector 3.0. Variable flee start position is a vector 3. That would be a vector 3.0, and then we save that. Okay, so that's the end of step 1, and then step 2 was to initialize tracking in the activate function. So if you go down into activate function, you can see it's a really big function. After you compute flee direction cached, so let's see here, flee direction cached, and before the final print we do this last step. So we'll say flee time elapsed is 0 and flee start position is that. Okay, we can obviously shift all of this across. This needs to be at 40 and at 60. So this needs to be at 40 and this at 60. Then these can all go to 60 like that. Okay, now that's the end of step 2. This means that each flee run has its own clock and starting point. That's a bit of a problem, actually. I would have preferred it if the clock was global, in the sense that if you've got 20 consecutive flee interruptions and the timeout was like 5 seconds, that would mean the flee, each flee would time out if it had run for 5 seconds or longer. But what happens if we have those 20 runs and we don't want that whole block of 20 runs to go longer than 15 seconds? You see what I mean, right? You go for the first flee, then the second flee, then the third flee, and the fourth flee. Each time it starts a new flee, you don't want the timer to restart. You want the timer to carry on. Because by the end of it, you're like, you know what, you're fleeing too much. Just come back. Come back to the capital ship, or do the so-called home, homing maneuver, and start again with your behavior pattern as a failure, right? So the pattern failed, come back home, start again. That's fine. We can build on this, right? We can always ask Perplexity to adjust things or to build on things so that we have that, But in the meantime, we'll just implement it as is, make sure it works, and then we can advance it after that. That's the word I was looking for. Improve, advance, build on. Now, step 3 is to enforce limits in the process function. So we'll go down to process function down here and enforce those limits, right? So your current structure was was like this, which it has, right? And we want to update it to be this huge block of code over here. Okay, and so I'm going to go through this slowly, systematically, and we're going to change whatever needs to be changed and leave whatever needs to be left. And hopefully we can get through this by the end of this particular live stream. We have about 20 minutes, 23 minutes, and then we'll call it. So we've got the standard, if not is active or not enemy ship, these like continue things, and it's continuing from here. So it's like, ignore this part is given. So here, after this, ship position, to danger, and distance, that's fine. Then if distance is greater than the safety radius, let's see if this code is the same. There's the flee message, behavior completed message, is active and a return. Okay, that's fine. Is active and return. And here, update robustness. So here we go. We make a comment saying update robustness tracking. Right? We say flee time elapsed is incremented by delta, and then we'll make a new variable here, traveled distance is a type float, so we put that at 40, and we can assign that as the following equation, which is ship position minus flee direction or flee start position, all of this dot length is active can be set to false at line 60, column 60, and this can go to 59 because of the plus. There you go. And that's that. That's the robustness tracking, and now we have the time-based failsafe. A time-based fail safe. Okay, and we'll just copy this code here. Right, move this down over there. We'll line all of these up together. Put all of these at 40 as well for consistency. We'll put all of these commas together as well. Again, I'm just doing this for neatness. It's not required, but it is preferred. And then this one we can set to 60. Okay. And then the distance-based failsafe after that. So here, paste that in there. And then again, we'll just organize this so that it looks nicer and is more of a pleasure to read. And then this one like so, and like so. Okay, and we can set this to line 60. Cool. And then if no meaningful distance, then nothing and apply flee motion. So that's still there. That's good. That's the end of stage 3 or step 3. And then step 4, how does this behave? So how this behaves, in the normal case, flee runs until the distance is greater than or equal to the safety radius. Then it emits completed with a safe distance reached, and the override lane resumes the pattern. And then in the edge case, stuck in clutter or poor deflection, then if the ship flees for more than maximum flee duration seconds or more than maximum flee distance units without reaching a safe distance, then flee emits failed with a specific reason, like flee timeout or flee distance limit. And then the override lane sees flee complete with failure and still cleans up in override and save state, so you do not get stuck in perpetual flee. You can later decide how the manager reacts to those reasons, like pick a different pattern or try another flee with different parameters. You can start with relatively generous defaults, like 5 to 8 seconds or 150 to 200 units, and then tune per ship in the inspector. But the important part is that each flee run is now bounded with clear telemetry about why it ended, which makes debugging and future multi-obstacle work much safer. Okay, so that's cool. And thanks for the help. I've implemented these changes as you suggested. Now we are going to need to test this new functionality and make sure it works as expected. Let's begin by thinking about the ways we could design a deliberate failure case in the testing seek behavior.tscn environment. What do you think? Okay, so the cleanest way to test the new flee failsafes is by deliberately building situations where, excuse me, where a safe distance is impossible, but flee keeps trying. And that way, the only way out is a flee timeout or a flee distance limit. Right? Now, simple failure setups in your current test scene. Here are 3 concrete setups you can try in testing seek behavior without changing core code. Box the ship in with non-destructible obstacles. Make it impossible to get to a safety radius in the cached flee direction. And then place several non-destructible mining obstacle meshes around the ship's starting area. Use 3 or 4 starting large asteroids or mining chunks, forming a loose ring, and then ensure they are all in the obstacle or mining object group so danger sensor sees them, and then position the ship so that its initial danger position is roughly ahead and the cached deflection flee direction points into another obstacle or just keeps it inside the ring. And then you set parameters in the inspector, right? So safety radius reasonably large, maximum flee duration fairly small for testing, and a maximum flee distance is small-ish. trigger a pattern that will enter an obstacle's danger radius, or press I to manually start flee with the danger position inside the ring. Expected. What is expected is that flee will start, it'll try to move away, but because the ship is effectively boxed in, it never reaches the safety radius, and after maximum flee duration or maximum flee distance, you should see the flee timeout or flee distance limit, where failure logs and the override lane cleanly exits. Not sure why my nose is this itchy. Then use an unreachable danger position. The goal here is create a flee that chases a phantom safe zone. So in enemy ship controller test attack pattern, temporarily pass a danger position that is unreachable. For example, far outside the play volume or behind invisible blocking geometry. And then make sure no real obstacles actually trigger completion via safety radius along the flee direction, and use a moderate flee duration and low flee distance, maximum flee duration and a low maximum flee distance. What is expected? Flee runs in a direction that never gets enough separation from danger position, hits the time or distance limit, and emits a failure, letting you verify that path without changing the normal danger sensor pipeline. Then the third case, align danger and flee so safety is never reached. Keep the ship perpetually not quite safe. Set danger position and flee direction so that the ship moves roughly around the danger at a fixed radius, not directly away. For example, give flee a direction or a deflection angle near 90 degrees, so it skims around the object rather than directly away. And then choose safety radius slightly larger than the geometric distance the ship tends to stay at. And then again, set a small maximum flee duration and a maximum flee distance. What is expected? The ship never crosses the safety threshold but keeps moving. The failsafe should eventually fire. How to observe success. In all these cases, for the test, you want to see flee activation line with starting position and flee direction, no safe distance reached line, a clear flee behavior timeout or flee behavior aborted minus maximum flee distance reached line with your debug data, and then on behavior completed treating it as failed and still unwinding the override state cleanly. Once you've tried one of these setups, share the log and the current flee inspector settings, then it will be easy to tune radii and limits so the behavior feels intentional rather than brittle. Okay, now I think I'll keep this live stream short, where I was meant to keep the last live stream short. We are nearing the end of 3 o'clock towards 4 o'clock. We have about 2 minutes left until 4 o'clock, which means that this live stream will be 10 minutes shorter than the usual 60 minutes. And that's just because I was a little bit late for the first live stream and there was a little bit of a time pause between the two, so they added up and now we have a 10-minute shortage at the end of this live stream. But I really can't carry on anymore. 2 live streams back to back is really taxing, and I would rather stop the live stream now than continue with my current level of fatigue. It's just going to drop the quality and we won't get much done anyway, and it won't be pleasant for you or for me to carry on. So I'm going to call it here. So thank you so much to Cubes for your support. I appreciate it very much. He's the junior DevVenturer in the middle tier of my Coffee memberships. So for those of you who don't know, Coffee is similar to Patreon. It's a support platform that you can go and support the channel. So do go and follow the link. It's in the description, or you can find it here at the bottom of the screen, right? coffee.com/mtkdev. And you can join any of the membership tiers, and they have perks listed under each, and they add on, right? So the intern DevVenturer is the lowest tier, and it has the perks listed there. Then the junior DevVenturer takes on all the perks from the previous tier and adds to them. And the senior DevVenturer is the highest tier. It adds the previous tier's perks to it, or rather it contains all the perks from the previous tiers and adds to them on top, right? But among the perks that are listed there is that you get role restricted access to certain channels on my Discord server, the DevVenture with MTK community server, right? And those channels are restricted to the DevVenturers, those who support me on the memberships in the coffee, on my coffee page. That's one of the perks you get, right? And you are all welcome to join the community, right? The access to the Discord server, the community server, is for everyone. And the link is in the description of this video. And the only restricted channels on that server are for the DevVenturers. And you need a role to access them, and you only get the role by becoming a member. Okay, so that's the end of that. Please do join the Discord community. The link is in the description. And the link to my coffee page is in the description as well. I hope to see you there, and thank you so much for your support if you do decide to support me on my coffee page. But then for those of you who want to support the channel, but in other ways beyond money, you can like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can share this video with others, and you can also engage with the content by chatting, right? So chat into underneath each of these videos, on the live chat when the videos are live, and in the ordinary chat when they are no longer live. Engage with each of the engage with the content, ask questions, add suggestions. Even if you're just saying, hey guy, hey MTK, you're doing a great job, I appreciate it, means a lot. It also lets YouTube know that my audience is engaging with my content, which makes YouTube promote my content further. Okay, so if you are doing these things, then even though you're not supporting financially, maybe someone else will, right? Either because you promoted my channel by sharing the links, or because YouTube promoted my channel because you are liking this video and showing that it is actually a popular video, right? Because if you don't, then YouTube thinks that my videos are not popular, and I'd like to think that they are actually popular. It's just, it's not reaching as many people as it could. And so I would appreciate your efforts in promoting the content as well. Okay. And it's as simple as just liking and subscribing. So thank you so much for your time and for your attention. I'll see you in the next live stream, which will be tomorrow now. But yeah, I'll see you in the next live stream.